Okay, so what exactly is pupil equity funding? So, pupil equity funding, or PEF, sounds like some sort of like shady investment scheme, but actually, it's a shift in philosophy. It's a new means of spending money, basically, and it involves taking money from budgets and handing it directly to schools, in order so that they spend it on the things that matter most to their pupils, or at least that's the idea behind it, and that's very much what the rhetoric around it would have you believe. Some of that rhetoric would also have you believe this is some sort of revolutionary idea that's happened here. In reality, it's basically meant transferring a Lib Dem idea from England called pupil premium to Scotland. It was introduced in 2017, and the idea was, again, fairly straightforward in terms of managing what's going on here. Every pupil in P1 right up through to the end of S3 who is registered for free school meals would attract an additional £1,200 to their school. Go straight into the school budget, and it could be used by the school to help, as we know by now, if everything else has to cover, close the attainment gap. So the government said it was going to be upwards of £100 million a year, I think £130 million a year, going to almost every school in Scotland. Something 97% of schools got some kind of PEF funding. Now, the government always said from the start, and you see it in lots of things, letters to parents, all sorts, that this is additional funding. But it wasn't really. Pupil equity funding was paid for by cutting council budgets. So councils are the ones who deliver education. Money that would previously have been handed to councils to spend on education was going to be transferred and given directly to schools. It wasn't new money. It was moving money around. And for some people, that's absolutely fine, because the schools should be spending as much money directly as they possibly can. But many people warned at the time that a model like this one was likely to end up really just plugging gaps. And people asked, well, it's all well and good handing money directly to schools, but are they really in the best position to make use of potentially very large amounts of money? What if it's better to spend that money on broader services? Things like, providing access to counselling or healthcare services in schools, rather than pumping it into increasingly individual interventions. The follow-on question from that, now that we've had it for a few years, would go, okay, well, it's been in place, so where's the money gone? And that would be a very, very, very good question. Because right from the very off, this was a really clear problem. Despite numerous attempts, some of them mine, some of them from other people, it proved impossible to nail down where this money had gone. And again, we're not talking about a small amount of money here. We're talking about, over the years now, hundreds of millions of pounds of public money that it is very, very difficult to audit because of decisions that were made to not keep the kind of records that we really needed to see. So in terms of how it's been spent, where's that money gone? There's lots and lots of really interesting and innovative stuff has happened in the country, because teachers are great and they've taken this opportunity and found ways to make it work for their students. But teachers are also pretty open about the fact that some of this money hasn't been spent particularly well. They are very, very clear about the fact that a lot of it is plugging gaps that shouldn't exist in the first place. There's also a bit of an issue, it's a kind of normal thing in finances, I suppose, but the money can't be carried over year to year without exceptional circumstances. So you do hear stories about getting up to kind of deadlines and the money just has to be spent, all that kind of usual stuff. Other issues with it, well, an awful lot of it, from what we can tell, seems to have gone on staffing. And that really tells its own story about the state of Scottish education. That this great, apparently, initiative that was going to be revolutionary, that was going to hand money straight to schools and really transform things, ended up just being used to try and put more people into schools to help kids. Doesn't feel like something we needed a £130 million initiative to learn the lesson of. A significant amount of the money on staffing, however, does seem to have gone on promoted posts, and while some of those might be very valuable, There are a number of them that would have what you might call a questionable impact, and I've heard from individuals who have had PEF-funded jobs that, for example, did not have a formal job description. There are major issues with how it's been used around staffing. So has it worked overall? Well, we don't really know. As I say, we can't really track where all the money's gone. By definition, any evaluation that, as this one has, that focuses mostly on feedback becomes a little bit iffy. You know, if you walk into a school and say to a head teacher, "We gave you lots and lots of money, did you spend it well?" Well, unsurprisingly, the answer is likely to be, yes, we did spend it well and we expect to see impact any day now. But is that really a robust evaluation of a policy that, as I say, is now at the point of having accounted for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds of public money? Because, you know, a lot of extra money for schools would have been great, and if that was all additional, it would have been fantastic. But as I've explained, it was not extra money. And it's a shift that happened at a time of major cuts and huge additional pressures. Ultimately, all of this as well was done as part of the, you know, this attainment challenge, this judge me on my record closing the attainment gap stuff. And as we've already seen in the video about the attainment gap, well, if we're going to be judging that record, the outcome of that process is not one that favours the Scottish Government.